Welcome back, Officer Republic's Course Armor Police Chief APGAINS. I've been getting a lot of questions in the offline sphere because I've been nowhere to be found online. And the main question that's been coming in has been regarding the Bad Batch. And yes, it's been 3+ years since basically every time the subject has been raised on stream that I have mentioned that I would love to see a Marauder come to the game and boost the Mace Windu fleet. I wasn't expecting a rework. I was hoping that just there would be something in the Marauders kit that would allow... I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, Capital Games. You gotta be kidding me. Just give me the last shard. This is the most CGing. This is the most CG'd I've ever... Oh, this is ridiculous. All right, fuck this. I didn't expect a rework, and the rework is solid, and I imagine that maybe we'll get like another random clone ship somewhere at some point in the future to kind of round out the fleet, but I think we've definitely been trending in the direction of increasing the number of total fleets so that they can increase the number of total fleets in Grand Arena for those big boys who are spending the big cash. You know, the mamas and papas that keep us all in business as poor people, as we all know. And as like a tangential related fact of the Bad Batch potentially being a little bit more premium than they already are. And yes, I agree that the Bad Batch currently are way underrated. I'd say the Bad Batch are probably one of the most underrated teams for normal players. Obviously, the endgame players who have all the teams will be like, of course, Bad Batch are not overrated or underrated. They're amazing, and they counter so much stuff, and they're a staple of GAC. It's more so the fact that they're a little out of the way, and they kind of toe that line between really good auxiliary team and backbone team. They're like at that Imperial Trooper level, if that makes sense. If you think of the Imperial Troopers in the auxiliary tier list, I guess I should probably remove you now that you're a backbone team, and I'll get rid of this Jabba just so that the boys can be at the top. Like this is like this right here is like pinnacle of auxiliary team. It's like not amazingly flexible. Qui-Gon, yes, but the Imperial Troopers, no. But what it does really, really, really well, right? It probably does what it's supposed to do better than any other auxiliary team does what it's supposed to do. Maybe Iden's up there at some point, but like this is the pinnacle of high-powered auxiliary teams. But I would say Bad Batch and the Imperial Troopers, who are really, really good at very specific counters. I don't know if I don't think they qualify personally to be like backbone level team, which is like crazy flexibility, punches up amazingly well, does all sorts of crazy, wild, and wacky stuff. So I feel like largely they've gone under the radar for most people. But now that they're getting a ship, and there's probably going to be a bloom, a blossom, an explosion in the fleet meta, I think people are probably going to kind of notice this team a little bit more than they have in the past. And so that leads us to the main point of this conversation, which is, how does this affect Lord Vader? It's like the ultimate meme where it's like you take something random and the question is always posed, how does this affect LeBron James's legacy? So how does this affect Lord Vader's legacy? Well, a lot of his requirements, or 3 of them to be specific, Hunter, Tech, and Rekka. I don't actually know if these are the 3 required units for the... Let me pop open Discord on the side here. It's probably going to fuck up my audio, which is going to be funny, and then you're not going to be able to hear me for the rest of the video. But I think there's 3 of the old Bad Batchies are being required for the Tech, Wrecker, and Hunter. Tech, Wrecker, and Hunter. Ah, look at that. The Lord Vader requirements. How wild and how wacky. That's so cool. Padme is a solid character that gets power at higher relics. Doesn't really scale with Relic 8 these days, but whatever. Tusken Raider, the Tusken team's a little bit. Embo for TW, Jabba teams maybe. Oh, look, Echo Bad Batch is here too. I totally missed that. I guess you need all of the Bad Batch units. So this is fine. Dooku at 8, I imagine that when we get the trench ship, next year, we're probably going to get a Dooku ship of some kind just to kind of round out that fleet a little bit. Zam Wessel at 7 is obviously beautiful. Tarkin at 7 has become more viable now that the Interceptor and all those wild and wacky teams are out, especially with the Grand Inquisitor fleet. R-Trooper at 8 is fine. Skywalker at 8 is beautiful. New Gunray at 7 is but there's a lot of TW counters and a lot of really weird and wild and wacky stuff you can do with him in GAC, as well as like Conquest and other other PvE events as well. So does this boost the priority of Lord Vader in the general zeitgeist of farming? I'm not sure. Because, like, as currently constructed, if you were to start a brand new account and you were peak efficiency, like you did absolutely nothing wrong, you did everything as perfectly as you possibly could, you open with a Kenobi. But most people don't. And so entering the pyramid scheme of sadness, or success of sadness of success, is likely what most people are going to end up doing. And then it's just a question of, did you build a lot of offensive teams? Well, you're not going to go for JML because he's an offensive GL. You're probably going to go for Jabba because he's a defensive GL. Oh, did you build a lot of really strong core backbone defensive teams that can hold down the front line with maybe some good ships? Oh, you probably want to go Kenobi and build into that profundity afterwards with maybe starting to get Cal, because by the time you get there, he'll be accelerated rate. Turn him into a one-stop shop for beating all the GLs. Lord Vader, I don't think slots his way in early anymore, but I think maybe an argument can be made that if you go double offensive GL or maybe even triple offensive GL, that maybe it kind of leads you in the direction of going Lord Vader as the second defensive galactic legend, meaning like, you know, you grab C and SLKR, which seems to still be for some reason a very common farming path. Obviously, you're going to need a defensive GL. The best would be Kenobi, but a lot of people are leaning towards Jabba. It gets you into the pyramid scheme with JML and Leia, which is always nice. But if you went like, oh Lord, if you went like C and SLKR and then JML and then Jabba, a lot of people would after that would probably want to finish up with another offensive GL, offensive galactic legend in Leia. She's actually fairly fantastic on defense and useful for the raid. But if that raid is done and dusted and you don't want to farm the new GL whenever the new raid comes out, I would maybe slot in Lord Vader at GL number 4 or 5 at that point, because at this point we have 8. So like GL 4 or 5 used to be like, oh, you're never gonna farm this guy. Like that's where Rey like existed for most of time. But I mean, depending on how good this fleet is, and depending on if they shift the increase in fleets from like, if it's just in Kyber 1, I don't think it matters too much. But if it trickles down to like Kyber 2 and 3, then probably a lot of mid to like early end game players are probably going to want to overinvest in ships, because that's going to be an absolute fuck you ship only defense opportunity against the Giga Whales, who aren't kind of keeping up when that eventually happens. Maybe Lord Vader gains viability in those weird niche specific cases. But I think it's more so the case that people who already have him are extra happy. People who are farming him are extra happy, but I don't think I don't think this kind of shifts the needle, moves the needle a little bit. Maybe a little bit, but we'd have to see how the GAC changes and the fleet changes kind of come into existence and how the effects of that permeate throughout the game before I'm willing to say that the needle has been moved on Lord Vader. Still the fourth best defensive galactic legend. And for those of you guys who are wondering, generally speaking, these 4 right here are the offensive GLs, Leia, JML, C, and SLKR, because you generally take them on offense, and these are the defensive GLs because you generally put them on defense, JMK, Lord Vader, Jabba, and Rey. I still think Rey is better than Lord Vader because she seems to catch more datacrons, and every new light side unit that CG puts out somehow makes her like god tier for 3 months. And so the probability of Rey being god tier is like 95%. And then eventually, like I'd say like 30 to 40% of the time, Lord Vader catches a datacron that makes him OP as well. So it's still kind of a battle. And of course, you know, there's the Rey 5 X-Wing that's going to come out that will probably boost Rey's viability at some point. But who knows? I'm really sick if you can't tell. So I'm going to go. As always, I love you and I'll see you later.